Hi, guys. So, for today's episode, we're going to be talking about fashion's biggest and greatest war between Coco Chanel and Christian Dior. So, in order to dive deeper into it and to understand both perspectives, we need to understand each person on its own way, how they grew up, how they got into the business, and how they became a household name. And then eventually, we're going to understand why this rivalry came about. So, we'll start with Coco Chanel. So, Coco Chanel, her name was not actually Coco Chanel, her name was Gabrielle Bonheur Chanel. Sorry, my French is bad. And she was born in 1883 in a small little French town called Somewhere. Also, French is bad. And she was born into extreme poverty. So, like, she started life in a harsh way, and they didn't really have a good life in the beginning. Of course, they were extremely poor. And then when she was 12, 11 or 12, her mother passed away. And so, because her dad couldn't really take care of all of them, he just sent her and her sister to an orphanage that was run by nuns. And they took care of them. And she learned how to sew there. So that was kind of the beginning of learning fashion or understanding tailoring from this orphanage. And then when she was 18 years old, she left the orphanage and got a bunch of random jobs. And one of these jobs were singing in cabarets in Vichy and Moulins. So Vichy is a small city in central France, and Moulins was a small commune also in central France. So while she was singing there, she used to always sing this famous song, and it's Who's Seen Coco. So because obviously she was very famous in the cabarets, she used to do interesting performances. So people would also always be like Coco, 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 because they would want her to come out and sing the song. And that's how the name stuck with her. So from then on, she was Coco Chanel. So, through this world of cabarets, obviously many men go there, many wealthy men go there, and that's how she met interesting men who kind of changed her life. These men were wealthy, so they took her in and they introduced her to high society. So they introduced her to the Parisian elites. And obviously, that world was completely different from the world she grew up in and the world she saw. And instead of being intimidated and scared and insecure and running away from that scary world, because of course it's different and new, she actually was very interested. She observed them and she studied them. So she observed how they dress and how they move and the clothing they wore and the fabrics they chose. She just kind of wanted to understand that world. And the thing that was the most interesting for her in the beginning were hats, because at the time hats were an interesting accessory. Every woman had a hat, and they were done in different shapes and different fabrics. So she really loved them, and she wanted to start by doing hats, and that was her beginning in fashion. So she did hats, and she quickly realized that these Parisian elite women loved them and they were interested in buying them. And that's when she got the idea to open a store, again with the help of these wealthy men. So in 1910, she opened her store in Paris, and it was called Chanel Modes, and she was just selling hats. And when sometimes she didn't have the finances or she didn't have the exact fabrics she wanted to create these hats, she would go to flea markets and repurpose materials, old materials, and create her hats. And that characteristic was a good advantage for her, because it showed her that luxury doesn't have to be excessive and it doesn't have to be all this material. She can just take things and repurpose them and create something elegant and interesting. And that philosophy went to her and was essential for her as they went to the First World War. So obviously the First World War happened, and it was obviously crazy, and she had to close her store in Paris. And instead of running away and hiding and just being scared, she actually took the time to experiment. And that's when she found the material jersey. So at the time, the material jersey was used for men's underwear because it was very comfortable, it was very wearable. And she got the idea of taking this material and actually using it into women's wear. So you have to keep in mind, at the time, women were very restricted in every shape or form, symbolically, realistically, everything. They were just restricted. So women did the cleaning, did the cooking, and their clothes didn't really even help them to do that. They didn't really work, but they just took care of their household. So a lot of the things they wore was just things for them to look pretty, and things for men to look at and admire. And they were still in the corset kind of era where they couldn't really breathe and everything was restrictive and hard to move in. And at the time, they didn't mind it because they didn't really move a lot. They just did the cleaning and the cooking, and it's just simple chores, it's not like actual going out and working and heavy labor. So obviously, during World War I, everything changed. The men went to war and the women had to take their roles, their husbands' roles, because they needed to keep the economy afloat. They needed to keep their cities, their countries afloat. So they had to take the role of the man, and they had to take their jobs. They had to live like them and act like them. And obviously, the clothes they were wearing at the time was not realistic for them to continue wearing because it didn't help them move, didn't help them go out. And so Chanel saw this as an opportunity to experiment with this fabric jersey and to create women's wear that was comfortable and breathable and helped women to go out and work and come back and walk. And they had to do a lot of heavy labor during World War I. So she wanted to be that person to open this door for them. And the key thing is she wanted this to be permanent. She wanted women to finally have the same advantages as men, and in order to have that, they have to act like men and be like men. And she wanted to create clothes like men for women, but elegant and luxurious and chic. And you have to keep in mind, Coco Chanel came from, she had to pave her way in life. She really went through a lot in the beginning to get to where she was at the time. Obviously, as I mentioned, she had the help of a lot of wealthy men, but at the same time, these men obviously their intentions aren't always pure. So I'm sure they took advantage of her in ways. And so she always had to pave her way, and she always had to keep her head up and create these opportunities for herself. And she came from nothing, and she was raised in an orphanage to having her own store. So that was her whole ethic. She wanted to continue holding on to that, the thing that empowered her the most. And the thing that empowered her the most was that she was wearing clothes like men that helped her move and live freely. And when I talk about fashion and clothes, you have to keep in mind and know, okay, as much as clothes are nice and they look nice and there's trends and there's whatever, you have to keep in mind clothes are here to help us live life better. Of course, there's clothes that are nicer and clothes that are not really nice, but at the end of the day, everything just helps us live better. So for example, if we talk about denim, I'll deviate for a bit, but I just want to talk about this. If we talk about denim, you look at the denim jeans and you'd be like, you know what, that's so basic. I don't want to wear jeans today, because today in this world that we live in, that's a basic for us. Whatever, it's just denim jeans. But at the time, denim, it was very essential for them, because as I mentioned before in a different episode, denim was there because it was durable. That fabric was very durable, and it was perfect for people who didn't have money, because they needed something that's durable and would live with them for a lot of years, because they couldn't keep buying clothes and keep buying different jeans and different denims. So that was the perfect material for them. So you have to keep in mind, in the clothing for in fashion history, everything made sense and everything was there for a reason. Today it's just accessories, and it's just okay, whatever, I have a lot of clothes and I'll just pick from them. But at the time, it wasn't like that. It's not like they had these big wardrobes like we have today. It was very like everything was an essential, everything made sense. So going back to Chanel, she needed these new clothes that she wanted to design to make sense for what was happening at the time. And she wanted to build a future that women at the time and men didn't even see and didn't even think that would be the future. They were just living one day at a time. But she wanted to create something for women to help modernize them and to help free them from these restrictions, to give them the ability to work and to go dancing and to go out with their friends and to not just be these house women and housewives. She always used to say, luxury must be comfortable, otherwise it's not luxury. So that was basically her ethics going through her whole business. And she created many iconic items. One of like amongst them are, first thing, the little black dress. I love the little black dress because I think we all have a little black dress in our wardrobes, and it's something like I'm always like, ugh, if I don't have anything to wear to this, I'm just gonna wear this black dress. Like if, like for me, it's always like if I don't have anything nicer. But at the time, it was so revolutionary because it's something that, why she created it is because she wanted women to have this full day. So she wanted women to wake up and wear something that took her from morning to night, from going to work and working and making a name for herself to finishing work and not even needing to go home. Like from work, she can go to see her friends, go to a party, go to a cafe and just unwind and relax. So she wanted to create something that took her from day to night. And that was the little black dress. It's something that could be elevated with accessories and something that could be more casual in the morning. So the little black dress is actually very, very interesting, and I'm gonna talk about that in another episode. She also created the Chanel suit, which I'm pretty sure every woman dreams of getting one, like this elegant suit, makes you look very posh and very clean. Also the quilted bag, and then also Chanel No. 5, the perfume, which I'm sure all of us have smelled and loved. I personally love it from afar. Not really my kind of thing, but it's still nevertheless really nice. So she basically understood the modern woman before women understood what that is and what that may be. And her story wasn't perfect. During World War II, she was in a relationship with a German officer. So obviously she was accused of collaborating with the Nazis and by the by the French resistance. And many say that she did actually collaborate. Many say that she was blackmailed into collaborating, and many say that she didn't actually collaborate. So I guess we'll never actually know. But nevertheless, the only reason I think she wasn't executed, because obviously if you helped the Nazis at the time, they would kill you. And I think the only reason she wasn't executed is because she had close ties with Winston Churchill, so he stopped that. But nevertheless, her reputation was damaged. She had to leave France, and she lived in exile in Switzerland. And at the time, that was just like the tragedy of Coco Chanel. That was the end of everything. She was living in Switzerland, and that was it. That was the end of her story. However, in 1954, when she was 70 years old, she came back to France and she opened her store again. And the thing is, once again, she won them over. She won women over. As much as what she did during World War II, if it was real, if it was not real, obviously damaged her reputation, still women really needed someone to pave the way for them. They needed, at the time also, like a lot of industries were taken over by men, and one of these industries were fashion. There wasn't a lot of women designers except like Coco Chanel and Elsa Schiaparelli. So they needed someone to pave this way for them and to create and design something for them to conquer the new world that they were gonna enter into. And that's why I think they accepted her again. And Coco Chanel went through a lot. She went to, I'm not saying she's a good person. Coco Chanel had many, many, many like stories, and she was this tough woman, but we can't deny that she lived through it. Like, she went through poverty, she went through scandal, she went through many things to keep herself afloat and her company afloat. And of course, she did many bad things to get her to where she was, but she stood strong and she made this fashion house a legacy until today. And as she said, my life didn't please me, so I created my life. Now let's go to Christian Dior. So he was born in 1905 in Normandy in France, okay? He grew up in a cultured society. He was artistic and his life was stable. And when he was 10 years old, he moved with his family to Paris, and he went to the military. And he was always interested in art and design, but his parents pushed him into studying political science. And so fashion wasn't really something that came to him early on. It was something that was very gradual. And the only reason he got into it is because, so his family were wealthy, but they went to financial ruin and they became poor. And so he had to pave his own way and create his own business, and to help save him and his family, of course. So he began by creating these sketches in 1935, fashion sketches and illustrations, and he started selling them on the streets. And then eventually it was picked up by really big names in fashion like Jean Patou, Schiaparelli, Nina Ricci, Balenciaga. And he then worked for Robert Piguet, which was a Swiss-born Parisian designer and perfumer. And then he also later went to this big fashion house for Lucien Lelong. He was a highly, highly influential French couturier during World War II. And he stayed with them for a while. And then in 1946, that's when kind of everything changed for him and the doors were opening. So with the backing of textile manufacturer Marcel Bouzak, Dior opened his own house, the House of Dior. And in 1947, he had his very own first debut collection, which were 90 looks. He had rounded shoulders, cinched waists, full skirts, padded hips. It was very, very feminine, very structured. And amongst the people who were watching this fashion show was, at the time, Harper's Bazaar editor-in-chief, Carmel Snow. And her words kind of changed the fashion industry at the time. She said, "It's quite a revolution, dear Kristen. Your dresses have such a new look." And then everything began. The new look, that term, changed everything. And overnight, he was everywhere. And he didn't really just design clothes. At the time, he created a moment, because he saw that, like, after years of uniforms and survival and death and loss and many miserable things happening around them, he wanted to offer this fantasy world, and he wanted to create this whole world for women to be embedded in. And he was backed up by the three main things, which is royalty, Hollywood, and the press. So for royalty, Princess Margaret, which is Queen Elizabeth's sister, she admired Dior and she used to always wear his dresses in public appearances, also in private ones, and she would also always invite him to these events. And then for Hollywood, iconic actress Marlene Dietrich, she famously used to say, "No Dior, no Dietrich." And then for the press, we have Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. They always used to put his illustrations on the magazine. And so he was always backed up with people in fashion. And Chanel was furious. Chanel was angry. And to her, this wasn't progress. It wasn't a new look. For her, this wasn't something interesting. It was regression. It was like Dior was taking women and throwing them back to the 19th century, when all she wanted to do all her life and all her career was to take women out of that and push them to go to the modern and future world. So she felt like she designed clothes for a woman to be out of corsets, and here's Dior putting them back in with the cinched waists, and she designed for movement, and here's Dior making women a display and making them mannequins and just dolls to be looked at and admired. So she kind of wanted, as I mentioned, women to work and to walk and to live life and to be happy and to just exist in society and take a role in society and have the same advantages as men in the society. And she felt like Dior was not doing that. She felt like Dior was not freeing the female body, and like he was putting them back into these restricted clothes that just made them look beautiful, and that's it. And of course the clothes looked beautiful, and of course it did have a new look to it, but again, for her it was the same thing. It was still restriction. It was still clothes that could not make them move freely and walk freely, and it was just not progressive. She used to always famously say, look how ridiculous these women are. They're wearing clothes by a man who doesn't even know women, never had one, and dreams of being one. Okay, so when you compare Dior's clothes to Chanel's clothes, Chanel was very functional, it was very realistic, versatile. She didn't have any waistbands, and she had pockets also in her jackets, and they were very boxy. So she kind of was designing a way of life. She was designing the future for women, and Dior at the same time was designing a fantasy for women. And basically Chanel didn't want that. Chanel wanted to give them a reality check. And no, hi guys, this is a reality check. What's happening is we're going through World War II. As you can see, we can't depend on men all the time. We need to have jobs. We have to be stable. We have to take care of, be part of society. And we have to have fun the same as men do. But here's Dior. He's like, you know what? You guys lived through a lot. You guys lived through death, and you guys lived through loss and war, and your men were not there to support you and to be around you. So I'm gonna create this fantasy world for you to live in and to be in and to just be happy in. So I think both of them had like valid arguments. They both loved women. They both wanted women to live in a nice way, but I think both of them had a different perspective and different point of view on how women should live. So Dior wanted women to live in a beautiful, elegant, chic way. He wanted them to he felt like they missed taking the time out of their day to look beautiful and to do their hair and their makeup. And at the time, again, fashion was completely different. It wasn't like today you'd wear like a shirt and pants and it took you like 2 seconds to get in them. No, at the time it was corsets, and it was very cinched, very tailored, very specific measurements, and it took time. Like you even needed help from other people to get you into these clothes. So he felt like women missed that. They missed taking the time out of their day to like look beautiful for themselves and for men and for their husbands and for society. So that's why he created this fantasy world for them. But here's Chanel. She's like, you know what are you doing? That's not realistic, and that's not how women should live. Women should actually be comfortable and be freed from this cinched waist and from these corsets and from these skirts that you can't even move in or ride a bicycle in or walk in. So I want to know what you guys' opinion about this, but personally I think both of them are right. I don't think I can pick one side, because if you look at it, I think sometimes as women we have to tap into our masculine energy. And I think when I'm working and I'm editing or I'm writing or like just doing stuff, I need to be comfortable. I have to be comfortable, and I have to like just get into this masculine energy and just work, and I need to move, and I need to work out, and I need to like, even if I'm driving, I need to be comfortable. And at the same time, I have those days where I want to tap into my feminine energy, and I want to feel good and look good. And if I look good, I feel good from inside, and I want to be elegant and chic. So I think both of them had really valid arguments. I think if they just worked together, things would have gone differently and they would have created an interesting future. But nevertheless, we are living in that future now where we have both of them, and we can combine both of them. And that's honestly my favorite thing, because of course at times I want to just be comfortable, and at times if I have like gatherings or weddings or whatever, I'd want to look insane, and I'd want this cinched waist, and I want to be in a corset, and I don't even care about moving a lot. I don't want to move a lot. I want people to do everything for me. I just want to be like sitting like a princess. I think as women, we want both and we need both. But yeah, let me know your thoughts about this episode and about the whole argument, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.